This is Joshua.
Hey, this is Dave.
Hey, what's going on? This is Brandon.
And this is Matt Chernov, screenwriter of Hard Ride to Hell and Shark Swarm. And you are now tuned in to PVD Horror.
There you go.
Wow, good job.
Wow, that was well rehearsed and really good.
I don't think
That was better
anyone's
than
come
me, too.
on. No one's come on that prepared.
Yeah, it's. I can't believe you listened. That's even better.
Oh, it's a fun show. Are you kidding?
I'm sorry to subject you to that.
Well, I just wrote a piece for Variety about 2 weeks ago on the 20 or 15 horror podcasts that I had to recommend.
12, actually.
12,
we
was
did
it
read
12?
it. Yeah.
There's too many to choose from, but you guys were a personal favorite of mine.
Thank you.
Okay.
Would you say we were 13? Maybe
you were definitely number 13, 12.5.
That was, we were actually joking around a lot. We were going to ask you about that and kind of bust your chops a little bit.
Sure thing.
We were looking at that list, and I was looking at the names, and I'm like, well, those are some legitimate horror podcasts, so I can't even be mad. It was like Shockwaves is a personal favorite. I know they're not doing it anymore. But I used to love that one.
It was a biggie, like a groundbreaker.
Exactly. Yeah. And they're just so freaking smart. Like, I kind of strive to hopefully one day have as much not working knowledge, but I don't think I'll ever get there. They're just like a library of information about horror films.
So now that you're on this podcast, you're gonna redo that one and put us.
Yeah, we'll have to edit. We'll have to edit that in.
I was just checking. All right, let me do a quick introduction. So today on the show, we have a pretty good friend of mine. He has written Shark Swarm, Hard Ride to Hell, and he's also working on other projects that we will keep on the down low until the end. Matthew, Mr. Chernov. Thank you for coming
hello.
on.
That's the new nickname.
Mr. Chernov.
That's his actual name, Josh. That's not a nickname.
You know
Great
what?
to be here.
Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. I love the fact that this is a horror show, but also a Rhode Island show. That is a big thing for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So being a born and raised Rhode Islander, what are some of your favorite local entertainment spots and restaurants?
In Rhode Island, well, right now I would kill for a half dozen hot wieners. I would just do anything. That was like what I grew up on. That is my food of choice. I can taste them if I think about it hard enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Wiener Man on Reservoir Ave. Well, I always call it the Wiener Man because that's what it was when I was a kid. I guess it's now Oneyville, New York system.
New York system.
Yeah, but that one on Reservoir Ave is my favorite. I mean, that's where I would pick anywhere if I could be there. Newport Creamery, of course. I'd go for a good awful. I'm so jealous that you guys got the Monster Mash version this year. We didn't have that when I was a kid. I would have loved that. Another favorite Rhode Island spot is H.P. Lovecraft's grave. I visit that whenever I'm in town at Swan Point Cemetery. It's really an important place for horror fans to go and visit. If you live in Rhode Island, you can't not pay your respects to H.P. Lovecraft. Growing up, Rocky Point was still a thing when I was a kid. So the House of Horrors there was really one of my favorite horror things growing up. I can hear the sound of the music that they constantly played in rotation. Did you guys ever? Was Rocky Point long gone?
I grew up. I would always go to Rocky Point. I love it. Someone actually just redid like the seats. Like I guess because some of the seats were left over in the park. And someone kind of like reconstructed it and kind of like decorated up. I think it was the Wolfman one.
Oh,
so
it's like great. Cool. There was a Darth Vader one. There was a Frankenstein one. Those were awesome. So the House of Horrors were badass.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, when it actually shut down, before they sold everything off, they were doing a haunted house in there, and I got to go in and help set up the haunted house. And we had the run of the entire park. When it was shut down, and it was so cool to go into you like literally walk through the entire haunted house.
Oh, so jealous.
There, it just didn't have power, so you needed flashlights. This was back in the day when they first shut down. It was really cool. It was really cool.
Wow, that's amazing. It was one of those great ones that you could, because it was on a track and you were in the car that drove through it. That's so much better than the walkthrough ones, I think, where people just jump out. A good old-fashioned dark ride where you're on a ride that takes you up a ramp and through doors, like out of it's always reminded me of the Fun House, the Toby Hooper Fun House, where they're in cars moving around. That's just the best. I mean, that's really the coolest kind you can have.
Yeah. I have a memory of, I used to go there frequently with my family, and we would always get clam chowder and clam cakes, but we used to get the red, and that it does not taste good coming out after some rides. And so I always have like that thought now when I think of red chowder. I think of throwing up after
the Music Express ride. Or something.
Yeah.
That kid, Dave.
Yeah, I don't like rides.
Spilling out into the flume.
Not in the least. There's always that one kid, and you were him.
It was me.
You'll be glad to know, Matt, that they don't actually put the wieners on their arm anymore either.
I've seen that though. But that added that secret sauce, that little extra spice, the sweat saltiness, and that's what you wanted. Some of that.
I tell people, you haven't had a hot wiener until you had somebody's sweaty arm hair in it. Then you know you had a Rhode Island hot wiener.
What about theaters there? I always used to go to the Avon Theater. I would do midnight shows there, the Rocky Horror Show. Is that still a theater?
Avon's still around.
Avon. What about the cable car? I saw a lot of great movies. The cable car. Did it?
Yeah.
And I know the Meadowbrook closed a long time ago. I used to go there. I saw Dawn of the Dead at a midnight show there when I was just a little kid. That was my first time seeing it in a screening with a packed house. People were losing their minds. That was the Meadowbrook was a pretty cool theater. The one I liked too was the Garden City Cinema. That's long gone. But the thing that was great about Garden City Cinema was in 1982, when Creepshow opened, for some reason, Stephen King and George Romero went up and down the East Coast on the premiere weekend doing PR at various theaters, and they came to the Garden City Cinema, and they did a costume contest before the movie where anybody who dressed in costume could get in for free. So I was 13 years old, and my dad took me. I dressed up as this ghoul with this like stuff hanging off of me, and he just put a mask on. We got in for free because we were one of the first 50 people in line dressed in costumes. So we got up there, and they picked 10 of us out of the audience to stand up in front of the screen before the movie. And they turned all the lights on in the theater. So I was one of those 10. They tapped me, I think because I was a little kid. And then Romero and Stephen King came out, and they looked at us all, and they talked, and they pointed at each of us, and they were like whispering to each other. And then Romero pointed at me, and he went, "Come here." And I won first prize at the Garden City Cinema with George Romero and Stephen King.
That is amazing.
In Cranston. It was awesome. What a awesome moment. I still have it on VHS, the news report later on that night where they showed us all, and they did a little, I think McGee Hickey, I don't know if she still works there. She did the story about it. It was a horror royalty coming to Cranston.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You have to upload that onto YouTube, man. I want to check that out.
I know. I've got the tape right here on the shelf. I've been meaning to convert it because it's badass.
Yeah.
That's amazing to think that there was a time where Romero and Stephen King would even have to do PR on a project they worked on.
I know, right? It was wild. The first prize that I won was a Creepshow t-shirt, the Bernie Wrightson graphic novel, and a weekend at the Biltmore Hotel downtown. And so I gave that to my parents. They said that you guys can have that. I just wanted the t-shirt and the graphic novel, and it was great.
That's awesome.
Do you still have it?
No, the t-shirt was like I think they gave it to me for my size. I was small then. So I've long outgrown that. And I forget what happened to the graphic novel. I think just somewhere along the line it got lost. Yeah. I meant to have them sign it at the show, but by the time I was so caught up in this craziness, and then we got to see the movie, and that movie was phenomenal. I put it on my, I think, really high up in my variety list of the top Stephen King movies. It's pretty high up there.
Yeah. So being a journalist on horror topics and a screenwriter on horror films, How did you get into the horror genre, and what are some of your favorite horror films?
I got into it as a little kid. I remember one of the first movies I ever saw was the original King Kong.
Okay.
It was black and white, of course, the 1939, I think, 38. And it was on TV. And the second that I saw that movie as a little boy, I fell in love with horror. It was like magic watching King Kong actually fight dinosaurs and climb to the Empire State Building. Something about that movie really spoke to me. So I was off to the races after that. And then another TV late night experience was watching Night of the Living Dead, the original, and that just ruined me. So between those two movies, I was a horror freak since I was like, I don't know, 6, 7, something like that. It's just been nonstop, and it's now I'm past 50, and it's nothing has changed at all. It's just gotten deeper and deeper.
Yeah. I wanted to ask. Go ahead. Sorry.
You said favorite horror movies. I don't know about that. There's too many to choose from. I mean, it's impossible. All the biggies, of course, like Halloween and some of the Friday the 13th and Dawn of the Dead, of course, is great. David Cronenberg stuff is awesome. So yeah, it's just it depends on the subgenre, and it's just too big of a question.
Do you prefer monsters or slashers?
I'm a monster guy. I'll always go for a monster movie. Something about them, I never get people who don't love monsters. I just think they look so cool. Even cheesy ones. I love the costumes, the makeup designs that they do. Slashers are fun, especially with an audience. They can be kind of scary and stuff. But monsters, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool monster fan.
Cool. And that's why we get along.
Like I'm looking at Dave, you've got that Audrey behind you. I mean, one of the great movie monsters. That movie doesn't get enough respect as far as I'm concerned, especially the design of that of Audrey is just awesome. I mean, it looks like a real thing. I'm so glad it was made pre-CGI, so you got an actual practical Audrey that looks so real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to ask you maybe some difficult questions about screenwriting. So I'm assuming it's not easy being a screenwriter and kind of getting a project actually to like get in motion. So I wanted to see if you could offer some advice to any upcoming screenwriters or people who like have ideas and they don't know how to implement them. And also was curious if there's any hard lessons that you've learned over time that have actually been super helpful to you and you feel would be helpful for others to know.
It's hard. I was self-taught. I went to film school, but it wasn't a film school about writing in any way. It was this art film school about making experimental little films and things. The screenwriting was something I kind of taught myself by buying a bunch of awesome scripts by John Carpenter and Walter Hill and all of my favorite movies. I would buy the screenplays and then study how they were put together, how they were written, what voice they're in, what makes a good one, how punchy they are. So I kind of studied that. So I would definitely, that's where I would start giving some people advice. You don't necessarily have to take writing classes, film writing classes, screenwriting classes. Just get a bunch of great scripts that you movies that you love, and then study how they're written, and then just try to copy them, change some of the plot lines around, and see if you can mirror that format. Then gradually you'll start adding your own take on the actual original stories and things. So work with real scripts. As far as breaking into the business, it's tricky. I got taken in because a friend of mine he and I wrote Hard Ride to Hell as a spec script. It was just a project that we wanted to write, and we happened to give it to a friend of ours. That's something you also have to do, is when you write stuff, give it to people, send it out there, just ask them to read it. It's hard to get people to sit down and read a feature-length script. It's a lot to ask, but we gave it to our friend Mark Wheaton, who we knew online. He had just written the draft of the Friday the 13th remake for Michael Bay. It ended up being rewritten by some other people, but he's still credited on the film as story by, I think. Anyways, we gave it to him just to say, like, what do you think of this? Is it any good? And he read it and was such a gentleman. He said, could I pass this on to a producer that I know who's kind of looking for material? He's developing some movies for Spike TV. This might be right. Would you mind? And we're like, hell yeah, please give it to him. So he ended up passing it to this producer friend who then called us a few weeks later and said, could you guys come in? We want to talk about this script and some other projects. So it was just, we had no agent. We had no manager. It was giving a script to a friend who was kind of established and having him make that crucial handoff. So networking is big. You don't necessarily have to have a rep unless you really want to bust into like studio work, but it's just a matter of getting your stuff out there, meeting people online. We met Mark Wheaton online. My writing partner and I met each other on a horror message board. So this kind of stuff, responding to YouTube links, responding on Facebook, building up that kind of network of people that you trust. That would be my best advice. I don't really know how to do it any other way, how to get an agent, it's just a matter of who you know, how many people you can pass your material on to. It's definitely hard. It is a lot of work. It's easier to write the script than it is to, get that next step going.
Yeah, I'm sure. That seems like, if anything, that would be like the biggest roadblock is finding someone to actually be able to pass it on to.
Right.
I was actually curious about that. The Hard Ride to Hell, there's 2 other writers credited.
Right.
And I was like, I wonder if it's hard to sit down with somebody. Like if I was writing somebody and Brandon and Dave were there, they would outvote everything that I would want to write. And I would be furious.
It's hard finding that collaborator. So Hard Ride, you said there's 2 other names, and one of them is David Rosiak. He was my writing partner. He and I wrote all of the scripts together: Shark Swarm, Hard Ride to Hell, a prison movie called Ring of Death, murder mystery called Grave Misconduct, and a disaster movie called The Storm. We wrote for a couple of years. We were glued at the shoulder, sitting down. We wrote together most of the time, side by side, where he would type and I would look over his shoulder. And we worked well together because we didn't shoot down each other's ideas. We were really in sync with each other. So it was a great experience. I don't know if I would even be able to write by myself. I like having that instant sounding board where I throw out a crazy idea and he looks at it and goes, no, what if we did it this way? And then we're like, go for it. The third name that you saw on the credits for that movie is the director. Now, we had already sold that script to this company, and years went by and the movie had never been made. And then we found out online that it was about to come out on video. Somebody had actually made it. They never told us, hey, by the way, we made your movie. We had just been paid for it and it was gone. Somewhere along in that absence, the director removed a character and changed the ending just a little bit, kind of mostly for budget reasons, to kind of keep the movie kind of small to be made on TV. And because of that, she ended up getting a writing credit on the film, which is a little bit, I don't know, if they had let us know that she was going to be getting that credit, we might have put up a stink about it, because she didn't really add much to that, or if anything. But somehow she talked herself into getting an extra credit in addition to directing. So that's how that ended up. It's a weird little thing there. Yeah. She did an awesome job directing the movie, though. So we didn't really want to mind or cause a problem with it.
That was a pretty badass movie.
Yeah.
Oh, great. So you actually watched it?
Yeah, I saw it a while ago, and then I rewatched it again. When did I watch? Well, I watched it again today because I had the day off, and I was like, oh, let me catch up on this film again.
I'm glad you like it. Yeah, I'm really happy with that one. It's what we wanted it to be. It's a drive-in style crazy movie. It's a little bit of Race with the Devil, which is a great Warren Oates movie with Peter Fonda. It's got a little bit of that in it. I think it came up pretty good.
I think it's about maybe 15, 20 minutes in. All of a sudden it was like, boom. And I was like, what the, whoa. We're on.
Josh, it sounds like Hard Ride to Hell is happening in the background of your house right now.
Oh, it is. So I live on a main road. So you hear some drag racing. We also have an MC right across the street now. So you'll hear a lot of bikes in and out all through the night. So just an FYI. Yeah.
Well, they shot one of the Fast and the Furious movies just down the street from us. The first one where the family hangs out in that little store that they own.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the neighbors in that area are so fed up with fans coming there at night doing donuts in the street all around there. So yeah, we get the same kind of thing here as well.
Yeah. So now, were you happy with the finished product of the film that you had written?
Of Hard Ride? Yeah, very much so. One of the crazy things is that that first moment when you get to see the movie, we weren't there for shooting for that one. We were there on the set of Shark Swarm, but we weren't there for Hard Ride. So we had no idea if the movie was good, if it was going to be anything. So that night that David and I sat down, they sent us the DVD before it actually came out. And we put it on, and you start seeing they actually did it. They actually, they didn't change our lines. It's the same story. It's weird. It's almost like seeing a dream that you had, and then suddenly you're seeing a movie and it's the same dream. It's a weird feeling. You don't watch any other movie like you do when you've actually written the thing. You have a different relationship to it. So I'm pretty happy with how they pulled it off.
That's good. Cool. Because usually sometimes, like when you read a book and then it's so different from what they have on the screen, and so many people are going to say, oh, I love the book better than the film. So it's like, that's good that you're happy how it all turned out. So yeah,
I wouldn't have changed anything. I thought they did a pretty badass job. I mean, it was made for TV. It was made for Spike TV. So there are some budget issues there. And we had, in our version, we had a lot more bikers. We had a massive climax at the end. We're in this church where a giant bell falls from the ceiling of the bell tower. And it was a bigger, crazy thing. And they pared all that down. But it was great to see Catherine Isabel did a really good job in it, from Ginger Snaps. She's one of my favorite actresses in horror. And yeah, I know some authors kind of have a hard time seeing their material adapted, but not me. I thought it was cool.
That's awesome. I actually really want to work on a project with Brandon and Josh, just so I can scratch all Josh's ideas like he had suggested. I thought that was actually a great idea.
Pretty much what you guys do in every podcast, so fuck off.
What was that idea, Josh? Oh, no. Let's not do that. Let's do this instead.
Did you get to meet Daryl Hannah? You said you were on the Shark Swarm. Did you actually get to meet her?
Yeah. That was one of the only times where they took us to the set. They flew us to Fort Bragg in Northern California because they were shooting it on the beach in this weird little tiny town. And so we went up there. We knew she had already been cast in the film. That was really exciting because, I mean, who doesn't love Daryl Hannah? She had just come off Kill Bill. So she was kind of hot again. She had a little period there. And the only thing about her was I could tell when we were watching her shoot her scenes that she was one of the cast members who seemed to feel like she was kind of above the material. She was kind of rolling her eyes between takes. I think she busted out laughing a few times at some of her lines. John Schneider was in the scenes with her, and he was gung-ho. I mean, this guy was throwing himself into it, and you can tell in the film he's pretty good.
Yeah.
She was, you could tell she was just paid to be there. Mm-hmm. So it was a little disappointing. I think seeing Daryl at work was not what I wanted it to be. But everybody else seemed pretty cool. F. Maury Abraham was awesome. I mean, Armand Desante, we were told by the producers, don't talk to Armand, because if you strike up a conversation with him, he's going to pull you aside and he's going to ask you to rewrite all of his lines based on things he wants to say. Oh, man. So just leave him alone or you're going to open a can of worms. So it was a super experience being on that set and seeing how many people are involved in making this thing. Because that was instead of it just being a movie, that was a mini series. It was 2 TV movies. So it's 4 hours long. There was a lot of crew and cast involved. And when you walk on that set and they have a chair set up for you that says writer on the back of it.
There you go.
And they're bringing you, food, and you're inviting you in. I kept wanting to hang back and be like, no, I don't belong here, guys. I'll just look at it across the street. And they were like, no, you're part of the crew. Like, come over here. So yeah, it was an awesome experience. I'll never forget that one.
That's cool.
All right. So I noticed that you were involved in the Crystal Lake Massacres in 2009. What was it like to be a part of the first Friday the 13th fan film? And are you a fan of the new released fan films today?
Yeah, there are some really good. Some of the fan films today are amazing. They're just I forget the recent one that just came out. It's kind of a long one. And it's just I watched it. Which one?
A Boy Named Jason?
No, I didn't see that one. Is it Dark something or other? Or I don't know. Anyways, it's a pretty good one.
Never Hike Alone. Don't Hike in the Snow.
Yeah, that one. That one's great. Yeah. The one that I was in, Crystal Lake Massacres Revisited, isn't so much a fan film. If you have the Blu-rays of the box set that came out, or the individual Blu-rays on the Blu-rays of 4, 5, and 6, the Tommy Jarvis trilogy, basically.
Yep.
It's a special feature on all of those. Okay. So it's on the official Blu-rays, this Crystal Lake Massacres. And what it is it's written and directed by Dan Farrens, who wrote Halloween 6. He got hired to do all the special features on those Blu-rays, and it's a mockumentary that looks like Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah.
But it's set as though it takes place in Crystal Lake and all that. And my writing partner and I are in there, and it's that was super fun to do. I mean, I love those movies. We got to improvise some of the lines, even though Dan kind of wrote the script for us. And yeah, I mean, that's fun to be part of it. We had a whole screening one night when the Blu-rays actually hit the market. They brought Paramount rented out a restaurant, and everybody from the film came from the Friday series. I'm hanging out there with Adrian King and all kinds of people walking around, and they showed our mockumentary. And I mean, that's the best feeling. If only Amy Steele had been there, I would have died. She's I think my favorite final girl.
Now, have you ever made a final girl list? Sorry, Brandon.
No, you're good.
That's a good idea. No, I haven't, but I think Amy Steele, I mean, she's smoking in that movie. She looks so beautiful in part 2, and she's really spunky in that movie. So she would be probably my highest. I know everybody goes with Laurie as probably the top, but Amy Steele for me is the queen. Heather Langenkamp is awesome too, but I don't know. I think the Friday girls are way underrated.
How about Sydney? Where would she rank on your list?
I think the character is great. I'm not a huge Neve Campbell fan. Something about that character kind of bores me. She seems so competent. She seems so I never feel like she's in any kind of real danger in those movies. But so I respect that character. I think she's brilliantly written. I know a lot of people. She means a lot to a lot of people. We had to interview her not so long ago, and Nev talked about how many people over the years have come up to her and told her how much Sidney Campbell means to her, because she's a survivor. She's been put through the ringer, and she comes out on the other side. She doesn't back down. So I admire that character. She's just not one of my personal favorites.
Sure. Cool. All right. We'll be looking out for that list, though.
Definitely. That's a great one. I should have pitched that this year. October was very busy at writing those lists for Variety.
Yeah.
A final girl list. I don't know why I didn't pitch that one. That would have been perfect. Next year, I'll do it for sure.
Okay. All right.
Since we're on the topic of lists,
yeah,
you get a lot of backlash for your movie ranking articles.
Yeah, I get people.
Still a one.
Yeah, I get people telling me I should be fired all the time, telling me I like the guys when I did the Friday list, the Friday the 13th. I had people saying this was clearly written by someone who's never seen a Friday the 13th movie. I wanted to be like, dude, if you put on your disc of 4, 5, and 6, I'm on the discs. I think I've seen these movies. Just because I don't share your opinion. But yeah, I get a lot of backlash. It used to bother me early on, but I've been doing this long enough that I don't respond to them. I share the particularly mean ones with friends. Like, do you believe this guy just called me this? Or so that's kind of it goes
I'm gonna
with the
stop
job.
sending you messages because Biolante was like number 8 and it beat out Final Wars and Hedora, and I was like, what? Like, I didn't agree with that.
You're not down with Biolante quite as much?
No.
Oh,
I mean,
I
it
love
looked
that movie.
beautiful. It's probably the most beautiful Godzilla movie ever made. Like,
Yeah.
it looks like, I have the VHS, and even the VHS looks incredible, but it's so freaking boring.
Huh.
Like, it's a lot of, I'm gonna walk and I'm look at
Yeah,
me.
I can see that. I think I compared it in the list to a David Cronenberg movie. It has that feeling of there's a lot of gene splicing in there. It does take its time. You're right. The first half is kind of it's just like watching a science fiction movie where there's no monsters going on. By the time, but I appreciate some of the mood that's going. It's taking a much more serious tone than the one that came right before it. But so it's a controversial one. I can see your point. Final Wars is hard to beat.
Hedora was a really underrated, so I'm glad it made it higher on the list. But I wish it had beat out Biolante. No, I just, and Final Wars was like my favorite. So
point taken. Hedora is a personal favorite. I mean, what a movie! I used to watch that practically every other weekend on the Creature double feature on Channel 56.
Oh, yeah.
There was like, I think they only owned 5 movies and Hedora was one of them, but they called it the Smog Monster, of course. And that thing is just burned in my memory. I had to put that as high up as I did. It's one of the best.
Well, I appreciate that one.
We used to be pretty hesitant about putting too much of our opinions about films in our like posts and like in our discussions like early on, and I think we've gotten a lot like you were talking about, just like having thicker skin now, and I think that we're like a way more like willing to just give our honest opinions about things. But I remember like early on when we started doing this, we were like, well, I don't want to piss off too many, and now we're like, who cares? You can't avoid it. People get mad.
Josh, you can't post that. You can't put that up there.
Yeah. Oh, we just realized you can't make everybody happy.
Yeah,
It's not going to happen. Speaking of that, though, before you came on, we were talking about the Rob Zombie list.
Yeah.
And your list is interesting. So I thought maybe we could talk about that a little briefly, because you have some not so popular ones ranked pretty high.
See, I didn't realize that. I thought that was like the most obvious choices of all. So what's kind of
Halloween 2?
Oh yeah,
Brandon, remind me of the order if you can think of it. Halloween 2 was pretty high up, right?
He has Halloween 2 at number 4,
which is probably higher than most people.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, I think Halloween 2 is it's grown on me. I did not like it when I first saw it, and now I put it on all the time. It's I think it's a really cool movie. It's so unique. It's so I don't get people who have such a problem with the white horse, as though it's this terrible thing that's in the middle of the movie. It's barely in there. It's just a small little thing. So I didn't know that's not a beloved movie, huh?
Well, you had his Rob Zombie's first Halloween at number 6.
Oh yeah, I'm think 2 is way better than 1.
You think so?
Well, it depends on what you're talking about. The director's cut of 2, is that what we're talking about? Because that's a different movie. That is a substantially different movie than the theatrical cut, and I think the director's cut of 2 is infinitely better than 1. I think it's just 1. I get bored in the second half where it's just doing the babysitter story all over again. I feel like Linda and Annie are kind of boring in that movie, but I think 2 is way crazier. I think it's just a one of a kind, odd, crazy movie.
Yeah, I think the kills and everything were like really cool in part 2. Like it was more brutal and everything, but I enjoy like the story behind his Halloween, like the first one, the backstory. Now, did you enjoy the backstory of that film?
Yeah, that was my favorite part.
Yeah,
because that was the original stuff. That was him, like all the stuff where the young Michael's killing the bully when he beats that kid to death, and even just watching him actually I don't know, when he slits his stepfather's throat, that stuff I think is so interesting. It's once it has to, and that's all stuff that's not in Carpenter. Once it becomes the Carpenter version with his own take on it, I don't care about that as much. I've seen that story plenty of times, and John Carpenter already did it perfectly. So I didn't need to see that. I love the backstory. You're a fan of the backstory stuff?
Yeah, because myself and Dave, we work in the mental health field, so we kind of see like a little bit more into like some of the kids when they're younger like that, so it kind of like touches on it, and so it kind of gave us that backstory and kind of made it more realistic to us and everything for Michael Myers. From the original, it just shuts off, like he's standing there in the clown suit, and then police
he's
take
unknowable
him, and then it's gone,
Yeah.
So I thought it was cool. Because a lot of people hate on Rob Zombie just because they don't like him, period, So just him having the rights to sit there and do this film, a lot of people just hate on it, So it's like we kind of give it a chance and kind of like go into everything. So, and I think it's an enjoyable movie. And I'm not saying that was a bad call for you putting it at number 4 or anything like that for part 2. But I just think that like the story, kind of like you said, the white horse and everything. Sometimes in that film, I kind of get bored, kind of like how you get bored with the first one. So, but there's good points in both films, though.
I guess 2 just stands out to me more. Like there's some of those set pieces when he busts into the strip club and starts smashing the stripper all over the place, and they crushes that dude's head outside, and that whole strip club sequence is like a mini movie. It's just it's so great. Something about that one just really works for me so much better.
And this is actually why these ideas of like writing lists about favorite films and stuff actually is like kind of cool, because it starts to initiate conversations, and you get to share your opinions with people about why, like you justify why I like this film, and then it like gets us to be like, oh well, I never thought about it that way.
It's just a conversation starter. You're right,
exactly.
But people don't get that. Instead, they're like, how dare you put, especially when they complain about like, you had something at number 7 and I would have put it at number 6.
Yeah, something's like
whatever, it's small. Close enough. Like we're not that far off. But I know what you mean. Rob Zombie, I'm surprised at how many people, I mean, there are some people out there who just don't like anything he does. I personally love the dude. I've seen him in concert. His concerts are incredible. They're like better than any movie you've seen. And I just get something about his aesthetic. I know he does it a lot, the hillbilly stuff, the kind of everything's filthy and everybody's a rapist and everybody's horrible and a scumbag. But I don't care. Just like it feels like hard rock music to me. It's just like I get him. I wouldn't want every movie I ever watched to be a Rob Zombie movie, but I like knowing he's out there doing his thing. It's only he does that.
I said this before, and I kind of wish this would have happened at some point, but I would love to have seen a Rob Zombie Texas Chainsaw. I feel like he would have brought the whole feel of like the heat from the Texas heat, the dirty, grimy feeling, the family. I feel like he would have done like amazing job with that. I wish he had done that instead of Halloween, to be honest. Even though I do enjoy the Halloween movies he made, I think he would have really nailed Texas Chainsaw, the whole vibe to it.
I mean, he practically did that in Devil's Rejects. Has a little bit of chainsaw stuff with the face peeling and stuff.
Exactly.
And even in that Woolite commercial he directed, you've seen that one, when he directed a commercial for, I think, Woolite, the laundry detergent.
I don't think I saw that.
You got to check it out on YouTube. For some reason they gave him a budget to shoot a legitimate commercial on TV, and he does it like it's Chainsaw, where it's a maniac after he's killed people uses Woolite to clean their sheets that are all covered in blood. And that has a real Texas Chainsaw feel to it, that commercial. So it would have made perfect sense for him to do that one. Halloween was an odd one for him to do. You're right. It's much more of a spooky, subtle movie, the original anyway.
You know what I think of? I think of Clean Sheets. Clean laundry sheets all on a wire. And that's not Rob Zombie to me.
No.
He's Dirty Sheets, it's he's rips and all that stuff. So
what you got to do if you're into Halloween is the next time, if you guys can ever get out to LA, you have a standing invitation for the Halloween tour that I'll take you on in South Pasadena, where
Nice.
where you get to see the Myers house, the original Myers house.
Yep.
I was there on Halloween Day this year, and there was a line around the block of people waiting to get their photos taken in front of the house. So they had a guy dressed as Myers. And while I was in line to get up there, a couple went up there, this young couple, and the dude proposed to his girlfriend, and she accepted. It was a wedding proposal, took place at the Myers house. It was
Cool.
on Halloween
awesome.
Day. It was so badass.
Awesome.
That's cool.
We had somebody in Rhode Island set up a Michael Myers house. They literally built an entire set of Michael Myers, the original house, in front of their house.
I
And
think I saw a photo of that thing.
Yeah, probably. It was
probably.
shared a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it looked awesome.
yeah, it was pretty cool.
That was
Guys,
in Rhode Island? I had no clue.
There was two.
Yeah.
Somebody did the do you remember in one of the films where the house started to look abandoned and there's like wood over the windows?
Yeah.
Somebody, I think that was in Chicago, or I could be totally wrong. Somebody did that facade. But the guy in Rhode Island did like the original like
that's a
Halloween
good
one.
Yeah.
Michael Myers house, and then he got the big stand-up figure of Dr. Loomis and
that's so
Laurie
good.
Strode, and it was awesome. And then he sold it this year because I don't know why he didn't set it back up. But
Oh wow. Oh, that's great. His neighbors who are into that stuff must love that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
for sure.
Now, out of all your lists that you put together, what's one of your favorite ones?
I mean, it was fun to do the I'm a big Walking Dead fan, so I really like
Okay.
doing the top 30 episodes of Walking Dead, especially because one of my favorite composers who writes the music for that that TV series shared the article with all his fans and said, "What a fun read. This brought back so many great memories for me." So when a guy who actually has, wrote the theme to The Walking Dead shares your article and says that he likes it, that means a lot. I think the Friday the 13th one was the most fun to write. That's if I had to choose one franchise that I just feel the closest to, it would be the Friday movies over the Halloween films or the Hellraisers or Screams or any of that. The Fridays, I mean, that article practically wrote itself. It was probably my favorite one to do.
Yeah. So I was able to check out your podcast, How the West Was Cast. I enjoyed the episode about the top horror westerns,
Oh, great.
like the Ghost Town and everything like that. So how long have you guys been recording for?
Over a year now. We've
Okay.
got about 20. We think we just put up our 20th episode. That's just in addition to horror and sci-fi and stuff. I love westerns. I just think that great westerns, I can put them on almost any time, especially classics like the older ones, the John Wayne films and the Clint Eastwood movies. And I happen to make friends with this guy online who's a film professor, Andrew Patrick Nelson, who teaches about the Western. So he came to LA and gave a speech at the Western Museum here, the Autry Museum. And afterwards, I ran up to him and I introduced myself and I said, "Hey, we're following each other online. I just want to let you know your speech was great." And within a few months, we started talking about maybe we could do a show together. And this guy is so poised. He's so smart and he's so used to being on TV. He's interviewed all the time for history specials and things like that.
Okay.
So yeah, but between the two of us, we've done the 20 episodes now. We're still way behind you guys, but it's been fun to do. And so I'm glad you watched the horror one. Horror westerns, we almost did a follow-up this year, but October was just too crazy. There's still some more horror westerns that I'd love to talk about in the future. Ginger Snaps 3 is a great horror western. Ravenous is an awesome horror western. So there are still some more out there that are worth talking about.
Did you check out the I think it was last year it came out, or maybe early this year, the Pale Rider?
No, I saw the poster for it. It looked really good. It's like a witchcraft western or something.
Yeah.
Is it any good?
Yeah, it's all right.
Wow.
Just curious. No, it was interesting. It was interesting. Yeah.
I guess we're having nobody from that movie on the podcast.
I just ruined it. I asked him. No, I'm just kidding. It's the same director that did Scare Package, which I really liked, actually.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw that. That was a horror anthology that was on Shudder. That was really good. I prefer Scare Package over Pale Rider. Just said it.
I liked Bone Tomahawk is one of the best ones you could do. We didn't talk about that on the show because it felt too obvious, but maybe next year. And but yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that one. I'd like to see it.
There's another one that's been on my list of movies to watch for a long time, and I haven't seen it yet. Is Borrowers, I think.
That was covered that one on the show.
Okay,
it's definitely worth watching. It's a really cool movie. J.T. Petty is an interesting director. He, I think one of his first movies is Mimic 3, The Sentinel with Lance Henriksen. And you think the Mimic movies never really caught on. They just kind of made 3 of them, but his is pretty damn cool. It's and The Borrowers is great. It almost feels like you're watching a real Western. You could take all the horror stuff out and you'd have a kick-ass Western. So when you add the monsters in, it's just that much better. Definitely watch that one.
All right.
Did you watch Dead Birds?
Yeah, I thought about putting that on. If we do a follow-up, definitely a good Civil War Western. Did you like that one?
You know what? I really liked that, but it wasn't the, I don't want to say it was the atmosphere, but there was a lot going on that you didn't catch, like things in the windows and things in the mirrors and things in the shadows that move. And if you're not like actively looking, but subconsciously you pick up on it, which makes it creepier as you watch. And a lot of people don't realize it until you watch it again and you're like, oh, wait a minute, what's that in the shadow? Like, you know what I mean? I really like that movie just for the cinematography and the atmosphere of the film.
It's really good. A very underrated one. Definitely. I would put that on the list.
Definitely. And it had the guy from Sons of Anarchy in it. I can't think of his name. I have to look it up because I can't think of who it was, but he was a biker in Sons of Anarchy, and he's an incredible actor.
Yeah, I'm overdue to watch that one again. A good choice. I'll have to put that on the list. I think it's on Amazon Prime right now, or I've seen it there recently anyway.
So Matt, let's talk a little bit about Shark Swarm.
Yeah.
So we already mentioned it earlier, but that was a movie that you co-wrote. Mm-hmm. And was released on Sci-Fi in I think it was originally released in 2008, and it was part of what they called like their Man-Eater series, which was when I was reading about the Man-Eater series, they said natural horror films, but I guess today we'd probably call that like eco horror. I think that's kind of the phrase we're using nowadays. So how'd you get connected with this project? Like, well, I know that like obviously you co-wrote it, but like how did you get connected in this Man-Eater series and with Sci-Fi?
Sure.
And also, was your desire to do the shark theme, is that because of your Rhode Island roots? Did that have anything to do with it?
Well, there's a mention of Rhode Island in the movie, so that was definitely purposeful. A lot of the characters are named after people I went to school with at Cranston East, so it's there's a lot of Rhode Island hidden in that movie. What happened was like I said at the beginning, we sold that spec script for Hard Ride to Hell to this company, Larry Levinson Productions, and they said, well, we want to option this script. Maybe we'll make it in the future. But in the meantime, we have titles that we own that we've pitched to different networks, but we don't have movies to make them. So we're trying to attach titles to writers and develop these things. So one of the titles that they came to us and they said, how would you guys feel about writing a movie called Shark Swarm? So they just brought it to us. I mean, they didn't have to ask, how would you feel about writing a movie called Shark Swarm? It's like a dream come true, So we said, hell yes, of course. What is it? And they said, you tell us. They had no story. It was just the title and tell us what you think the movie is. So at first we wrote a whole pitch about that it takes place in Hawaii and that there's an earthquake and all this kind of crazy stuff. And we did that because we thought maybe they'll shoot it in Hawaii and we can get a free trip to Hawaii while we make a shark movie. And they came right back and said, no, we're doing this in California. What else do you got? So we rejiggered the whole thing and made it a very, like you said, eco horror. In fact, F. Maury Abraham plays a character, a professor named William Girdler, who is named after the director of Day of the Animals and Grizzly, 2 of the best eco horror movies of the 70s.
I love Grizzly.
Grizzly is that a great movie or what? One of the best.
So good.
Bill Girdler, there's a shout out to him. F. Maury plays him in the film. Eco horror is great. I mean, it's one of my favorite subgenres.
Yeah.
Prophecy, the 1979 movie with Armand Asante, who ended up in Shark Swarm. We had a whole prophecy ending where Armand kills one of the sharks with a bow and arrow, like he does in Prophecy, but that all got cut. Anyway, so yeah, what an experience to write that. To write that movie was a real challenge because we had never written something that was going to be 4 hours long. You can't rely on the rules you normally rely on for a feature where you have 3 acts and everything's very clear and you only have to fill up 90 or so minutes. This was filling up a massive amount of time, which meant more characters, more scenes, a bigger story. Just keeping track of when the last time a character was on screen so we don't lose track of them meant filling out charts and graphs. Everything was color coded so that we could keep. I mean, it was a lot of work that I never anticipated. But what fun to be able to brainstorm and say, what if the sharks attack a baptism in the middle of an ocean? I mean, I don't know if they do ocean baptisms, but we wrote that in there. I was like, I want to see parishioners get eaten by sharks. I just want to see that. So that went in there, and I mean, it was a pleasure to work on. If it was also directed by this guy, Jim Kotner, who was a cameraman on Jaws 3, on Jaws. He was one of the camera assistants on the original Jaws, and he was the cinematographer of Jaws 3D. So he had always wanted to direct his own shark movie after filming other people's shark movies. So he took this job very seriously and did a great job, I think. The special effects let us down a little bit. They're maybe not the greatest. They built 3 full-size great whites that we got to see once at the warehouse that were these animatronic, massive great whites. They looked awesome, but they don't look great on film. Once they put them underwater, they didn't work properly. So there's a lot more CGI sharks in that movie than I would probably choose to have in there. But still, looking back on it, I mean, that's one of those ones where you sometimes still have to pinch myself and think, no, you got to write a 4-hour shark movie for TV. It's just awesome.
Now, you said there was a lot of problems writing. How was it to leave the cliffhanger on each episode? Like, how do you sit there and map out how to leave cliffhangers in between commercials and stuff? I could never figure it out.
We didn't do that. Actually, we just wrote the script, and at one point we asked the producers, how do you want us to break this up? When is the first commercial act coming in? When is the first break? When are you going to split the night into 2 nights? Like, what's the cut line? And they said, don't worry about it. Things might change in editing. There's too many things. We can't anticipate what it's going to look like then. So just write a movie. We'll figure out where to add those things. So any of those cliffhangers, even the end of night 1 split where the next film starts, was up to them. And actually, they changed a lot in editing. Our movie opened kind of like The Fog. A lot of it's based on The Fog. In fact, the sharks at one point attack Spivey Point, which is from Carpenter's The Fog. There's all these little Easter eggs in that movie. So, but in our script, the sharks attack these 2 guys in a boat early on, and it's right out of The Fog. That scene ended up in editing in the middle of the movie. They just reorganized things. So they got a little crazy when it came to editing. So it would have been interesting to plan those cliffhangers out a little bit better.
I just want to give you a heads up. We had the Argentinian screen queen, Clara Kovac, on, and this is one of her favorite films. So
what is?
Shark Swarm.
Are you kidding? That's so awesome.
Matt didn't believe it at first.
I thought you meant the
what movie?
well, she might be one of, maybe she's I can tell you for a fact, I know it's done very well in other countries, because twice a year I still get checks of foreign royalties where it continues to show in perpetuity on Yugoslavian TV, or in Bangladesh somewhere. Like, these movies still keep existing. So I get the checks get smaller and smaller every year, but I still get them from when it shows in foreign territory. So good for her. I'm glad she has good taste as far as I'm concerned.
Well, she mentioned it to me, and I'm like, I don't think I've seen that. And then when I watched it, I remember seeing it. I think I want to say it was on Sci-Fi one time or something. I remember it replayed on TV, and I saw it on TV. So I knew I had seen it before, but I was like, oh, go figure.
That's
So
too funny. I love it.
Yeah, I'm actually, as soon as this drops, I'm gonna send it to her and be like, guess what we interviewed.
That's good. Oh, yeah, I got to listen to her episode. I think I started listening to it because I wanted to hear how people introduce the podcast. So I heard her do it. She did a good job.
She was great, actually. She's a huge horror fan, so that was really cool. And Josh said her name wrong, so hopefully she doesn't listen to this.
I said her name wrong like 8 times. She was getting mad at me. She yelled at me. Like one time she's like, I watched The Sun. I'm like, I saw that. She's like, no, you didn't. It was awesome.
And she was right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
So Matt, I noticed a weird coincidence when I was watching Shark Swarm. There's a woman in it, and I was like, oh, I've never seen this woman before. So I looked her up because she was attractive and I want to see what she's been in. And then I saw there's a picture of her and James Van Der Beek together. Yeah, right. So it's his wife. And then I looked at your works, and you also worked with James Van Der Beek. Are you part of a connection with the Van Der Beeks? Is that what's going on here?
That was purely coincidental. I had no idea. I think it's Heather. I forget her name, Heather McComb or Heather something or other from Shark Swarm. I never actually met her on the set. She's pretty cool in it. I like her. I didn't know she was married to him. And the one that James Van Der Beek is in that we wrote, The Storm, was a crazy disaster movie for NBC. I never got to go on the set or meet him. So no, there's no connection there. But it's funny how people, you can play like what's it?
Yeah, that 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon type thing.
Same thing, where you end up knowing a lot of the same people without ever meeting any of them. So yeah, that's
so just a weird ass coincidence. That's definitely funny.
And if she is listening to the podcast, Dave does not want to sniff your toilet seat or anything. Let's make that clear.
Geez.
Okay.
James, I looked her up because she was hot. I was following her. So
I just wanted to see what else she's been in, if she's been in any works.
She's kind of charming. I think there was a cool scene that was supposed to be in the movie that got cut. I think it's a dream sequence. I don't know if it made it into I can't remember if it made it into the final thing, where one of the characters has a nightmare that he's swimming underwater with her and she turns into a shark in front of him. So that was it seemed like a cool scare scene to write. We wrote it. It looked awesome. And they filmed it. And because they sent us a rough edit that I think only David and I have copies of left. Maybe one of the producers still does. So we got to see the unedited version where it's still kind of the effects weren't all done. And that dream sequence would have been great. I think she did the whole thing. She was in a tank. They did a lot of underwater photography in that movie. It's pretty ambitious. They were filming out on boats and underwater and it's not, they didn't just fake it all. It's it was a hard project.
It's funny because I noticed that early on. I was like, wow, they're actually like out there. And I was like, I was trying to figure it out. I was like, are they really out in like the ocean doing this, or is it? And you could tell, So that was kind of cool. It definitely exceeded my expectations for a sci-fi shark movie when I watched it. I was like, wow, the acting in this isn't what I expected.
It's a little bit better. Yeah, the acting's a little bit better. It's repetitious. They ended up adding a ton of extra scuba diver deaths we didn't write that stuff in. So, I mean, and they reuse a lot of the same shark footage over and over again. So there are problems with it, but kids like it. Little kids like it. They love those little laser guns, the pulse guns that they shoot the sharks with. That was literally something I came up with while we were stoned, I think. Like, why don't we just have the sharks? Wouldn't it be cool if they were shooting underwater laser guns at the sharks? And it ended up in the movie. It's so weird when you come up with these ridiculous things and they actually take you seriously and then put them in the film. So
that's wild. Yeah.
So Josh let us know that you had the honor to do the official production notes for an awesome film that will be hitting theaters this January. Can you let the listeners know what's going on and explain what production notes are?
Sure. This is a little side gig that I do. In addition to writing stuff for magazines and Variety and stuff, I write production notes. And what that is every big movie that comes out has a press kit attached to it that'll have a biography of everybody involved in the film, who each of the actors are. It'll have a synopsis of the film. And these go out to journalists and critics and things just so that they can, if they're planning to interview the cast and crew, they can read the press kit and find out little details to ask them about. So my job for writing those is writing the production notes. And that's usually like an 18 or 20 page document, a really long history of the making of the movie, from who came up with the first idea, who bought the rights to this, or who wrote it, how they hired the director, the cinematographer, the casting, the special effects. You break the entire movie down. It's basically like the official history of how that movie was made. We have to interview the cast and crew. I mean, I think for some of these, we interview about 20 people. And it's like a giant magazine article, but bigger than any that you would ever read in a magazine. So recently, I think it was in September or something, the editor who hires me to write these production notes said, I think I have a project that's perfect for you. How would you like to write the production notes for the new Scream reboot that's coming out in 2022? So, I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? It's just awesome. I love Scream. I think that series is great. So getting to interview the directors, the producers, the two screenwriters, Nev Campbell, Courtney Cox, David Arquette, we spoke to him. We spoke to all the new cast. I mean, there's a whole new cast in this movie. The special effects dudes. The only person we didn't talk to was the cinematographer and the composer. I would have liked to have spoken to them. They sent me the script to read ahead of time for the movie. And then we got to see the movie. So I got to write this massive thing. They really wanted to hear a lot about Wes Craven and about how important he was. So it was a lot of it's writing about the original Scream movie, and this original series. So that was a treat to be able to work on that. And I can't talk about any of the details in the plot. You've probably seen the trailer a bunch now. I think they just put out a featurette the other day that's new online that has some interviews with the cast and crew that were done on the set. So I can't talk about the details of the movie because it's super secret. But what I can say is this is the best Scream since the first one, hands down. And it is everything that, if you weren't happy with Halloween 2018 and how they rebooted that, this is that done right. This is very, very good. More serious than I expected. It's a horror movie. This is not a comedy like Part 3 was. And I like Part 3. I think that is its own little weird movie. It's a fun, Parker Posey is hilarious in that movie. There's some great jokes. This is a hardcore horror movie with some humor as well. But Scream is if you're a Scream fan, you are in for a treat with this thing.
Oh man, see, I'm a big fan. Me and my kids, we love Scream. So this is good news. Like, I'm so happy because I seen the trailer and I'm just like, man, they're giving so much away because it's like each person is just like with the killer. So it's just kind of like, okay, who's this? You know what I mean? Like, it's so hard to kind of break up that trailer, but it's awesome. I'm happy to hear this from you, that this is the best one since the first one, because the second one was good. The third one, like you said, it had a little comedy and everything. But I always thought like the fourth one. What do you think about Part 4? Was awesome.
Yeah, there are things I like about it. There are things I don't. I wish it looked better. I don't think that movie was shot really well. It looks kind of boring. I think the having Emma Roberts be the killer, I appreciated that. I thought she's pretty good.
Yeah,
it doesn't stick in the mind for me as much. And in fact, some of the people involved in the new one, when we would ask them about things from the other ones, didn't really even remember anything about 4. So it's kind of, what's your take on 4?
I thought it was a good film because like when it first released, because I really didn't care for Part 3. Yeah. So when Part 4 came out, I didn't even pay attention. I didn't even go to the theaters to watch it, and I ended up just watching it at home one day, and I was like, oh, this was this wasn't bad, you know.
Yeah.
Like, it was a cool different take on it. So, but I'm always gonna love the original, you know.
Yeah.
So
This one's you're gonna be really happy. You're gonna be. I predict you're gonna be really happy. If you're not, you can say it too. But of course, I think I wouldn't worry about this one at all. I think you got something to look forward to.
Thank you for letting us know.
Awesome.
That's awesome. There is one more thing that I want to mention real quick.
Yeah.
So I have the Shark Swarm DVD. I don't know if you could see it.
Yep. Oh yeah.
I don't remember the dream where she turns into a shark.
Okay, so that's only on the version we have.
You're saying it. I'm like, I don't remember that. I would have remembered something like that. Do you have like an unedited version of the film?
Yeah, I do.
Unedited?
Yeah, it's the rough cut. Some of the special effects aren't there, some are. And the dream sequences, that actress Heather is swimming around with her boyfriend, that dorky scientist dude. They're underwater. They're kind of making out. And then she sprouts fangs and has black shark eyes. And they did it. It looks pretty badass. And she bites through his snorkel and he suffocates. And then he wakes up in bed and it's all his dream. Like, and he turns over and she's smiling at him like, hey, what was the bad dream you just had? Just to scare people. So that one's in there. That's in that unedited.
Is there any way to get an unedited version?
I'd have to see if I still even know where it is. It's they wouldn't release it. I know that it would have to be like, it's maybe one of those things like, you know, the Halloween 6 producer's cut that you could find on before they released it officially, when you could find it at conventions and things like that. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody could turn the Shark Swarm unedited one into a super cut or something, but nobody's taken that on yet. If you are really interested, I'll look around and see if I can find anything. I can't promise it, but if I do, I think you would be the guy to pass it on to.
I love it. I love it. I'm a huge eco horror guy. I have seen so many shark movies, so many. I love them. And I actually have Halloween 6. I have the demo VHS of it. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, from it was like a demo of the producer's cut version or what?
It just says demo on it, and it says do not resell, and then underneath it's like when you watch the film, it flashes sometimes. This is the demo.
Oh, interesting.
And
you got that right, Dave.
Yeah, I got a bootleg version of that.
The other day in my collection. I forgot to tell you, Dave. I thought it was pretty cool. I'm like, oh, I forgot I had this demo, because I'm not a huge Halloween fan, but somehow I ended up with a demo tape. So anyway.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that, because I think that there are some things in that it's a little hard for me to watch sometimes because it hasn't been finished. It looks a little like cringy at times, but you can see more of what the movie was supposed to look like in that one.
Cool.
That's cool.
All right. Well, Matt, I think that about wraps it up for us. So once again, thanks so much for joining us. You know what I want to have you do before you leave, though, is could you just tell people, I mean, we talked about all the lists, we talked about your work. Tell people where to find that. We didn't really specify where exactly all these lists are located.
Most all of the lists run on variety.com. But that can be hard to search through because they get buried with new material. So if anybody wants to find out any of these lists, there's crazy ones on there we didn't talk about, like the creepiest nuns of all time, the best crocodile and alligator movies, the best Stephen King films, lots of oddball things. They can find them all at MatthewChernov.com. It's about as easy as it gets.
Awesome.
Everything's collected there. That stuff, the James Bond stuff that I write for a bunch of Bond sites, there's all the horror stuff is right there as well. So the only thing that's not there is any of the production notes. That stuff they keep really under wraps. But please go MatthewChernov.com and check out the articles.
Okay. And keep an eye out for that new article coming out, Top 13 Podcasts with PVD Horror as number 13.
Perfect.
Climbing our way up too. Get shockwaves off there. They're not in round anymore. We're the new shockwaves. Just kidding, shockwaves lovers. Just kidding.
Don't send us hate mail. Don't cancel us. Don't cancel us.
Yeah. Thanks again, Matt, for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. I love what you guys do. I think the show is great. I love the Rhode Island angle. It's just perfect. It reminds me of home.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, cool.
So thank you everyone for listening. Signing off. This is Dave.
This is Joshua.
And this is Brandon.
And this is Matt.
Have a good night.
Take it easy.
So there was a problem with your Gators list too. Where was toilet?
Yeah.
Now that we're off
where
here.
was what? Which one did I leave off?
Toilet Gators.
I've never heard of that. Is that a real movie or
Oh,
like
yeah.
a bad dream you
Oh
had?
my God.